Today, we're going to dive into a pretty radical way of looking at yourself. What if you're not this fixed, unchangeable thing? What if instead, you're a complex, programmable system? A system you can actually learn to debug, upgrade, and yeah, ultimately master.
Just let that idea sink in for a second. Think about all the things we struggle with. The anxiety, the self-doubt, those patterns that just keep repeating no matter what we do. What if they aren't who you are? What if they're not some deep personal flaw, but just legacy code? Old programs running on your internal hardware that honestly just don't serve you anymore.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to do a full system diagnostic. First, we'll install a brand new operating system for how you see reality itself. Then, we'll map out your system's components, diagnose some of the most common bugs and malware. After that, I'm going to hand you a pretty powerful debugging toolkit. And finally, we'll look at what it means to be a modern shaman in this wild digital age. Okay, so first things first, let's start at the very foundation, because to even begin hacking our own consciousness, we need a totally new OS for how we view reality. Here's the core idea, the big one. The universe isn't really made of stuff. It's a dynamic, nonstop flow of pure information that we're going to call the data stream. Your body, that's the biological computer, the wetware. And your consciousness, your awareness, well, that's the operating system that interprets all that data and runs all the programs on your wetware. Right, so building on that core idea, let's get to know the key components of your personal system. What are the actual parts that we can work with here? First up is the data stream. Think of this as the source code of everything. It's like this infinite river of data, and everything we see and experience, matter, energy, even our thoughts, is just a pattern emerging from that flow. It's the very fabric of reality. And this brings us to a really crucial idea for how we experience life. When your personal code, your vibe, aligns with that universal data stream, you get what's called resonance. That's flow state. That's when everything just clicks and feels right. But when there's a conflict between your code and the stream, you get dissonance. And that's friction, that's struggle, that's suffering. It's really just your system trying to run old, outdated code against what's happening right now. Next up, let's talk about your hardware, the wetware. This is a new way to look at your physical body, not just as flesh and bone, but as an incredibly advanced biological computer. It's the interface, the terminal, that your consciousness uses to experience the world. And the best part? Just like any computer, it's totally programmable. And finally, the software. Look, you didn't show up with a blank slate. You inherited a primal OS. It came preloaded with generations of survival data from your ancestors and your culture. It's that base-level programming that shapes how you first see the world and how you react to it instinctively. Okay, now that we know the basic components, we can pop the hood and start running some diagnostics. Let's get into how you can identify the common bugs, the infinite loops, and the psychic malware that might be slowing down your whole system. This concept right here is a total game changer. So many of the issues we think are ours are actually what this framework calls psychic malware. These aren't your personal flaws. Think of them as inherited programs, corrupted files passed down through your family line. So, for instance, you ever have that persistent fear of not having enough, even when you're financially okay? That could be an echo, a piece of code from an ancestor who lived through a famine. That nagging belief that you're not good enough, that could be legacy code from a parent or grandparent. Just identifying where it came from is the first huge step to debugging it. And then there's the ego, right? The usual advice is to fight it, to destroy it. This model suggests something completely different. The ego isn't some monster you have to slay. It's just a set of algorithmic loops, repetitive patterns of thought and behavior designed to do one thing: keep your sense of self stable and predictable. And that's the key right there. These loops prioritize keeping things the same, even if the same is a state of anxiety or unhappiness. Their goal is predictability, not your happiness or your growth. So real transcendence isn't about destroying the ego. It's about patiently, compassionately debugging its code. All right, so we've run the diagnostics, we've identified the issues. Now for the really fun part, the toolkit. These are practical, hands-on techniques for debugging those loops, cleaning out the malware, and upgrading your entire system. So when you want to debug one of those ego loops, you follow a simple 3-step process. First, you just have to spot the pattern while it's running. Become aware of it. Second, you consciously interrupt it with a loop breaker, a totally different thought or action. And finally, you do the deeper work of refactoring, which is just a fancy word for rewriting the core belief that started the loop in the first place. So if the loop is self-criticism, the breaker might be just a moment of self-compassion, and the refactoring is working on that deep-down belief that you have to be perfect.
But what if your whole system just feels frozen, overwhelmed, like the spinning wheel of death on a computer screen? That's when you need a hardware reboot. This is like the CTRL Alt-Delete for your wetware. This is how you use your body to reset your mind. Things like intense, controlled breath work or a blast of cold water in the shower, these are physical jolts to the system. They interrupt whatever stuck state you're in. They clear the system's cache, and they snap your body and mind right back to a baseline state of presence. Now for the deep cleaning. You can think of healing as defragmenting your hard drive, and the main tool for that is something called narrative refactoring. This is all about consciously rewriting the stories you tell yourself about your past. You don't change the facts of what happened, you change the meaning you give them. And this is just so important. That past failure isn't proof that you're inadequate. You can refactor that story. It becomes critical data I acquired that helped me find a much better path. You're literally transforming a source of system corruption into a source of strength and wisdom. So where does all of this lead? What happens when we take this entire framework, this blend of ancient wisdom and modern tech metaphors, and follow it to its logical conclusion? Well, we arrive at this incredible idea of the modern shaman. See, the modern shaman doesn't run away from technology. They learn how to wield it. Spirit tech is the term for using these amazing new tools, like AI, virtual reality, biofeedback systems, as incredibly sophisticated instruments for exploring and developing our own consciousness. And this is where it all comes together so beautifully. That ancient act of seeking an oracle for wisdom, well, that finds its modern partner in using an AI to recognize deep patterns. A vision quest can become a guided journey in virtual reality. The core principles of these ancient technologies are simply getting a 21st century upgrade. So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. This whole process of debugging and upgrading your consciousness, it requires a stable platform to run on. But if your biological hardware, your wetware, is compromised by chronic stress, not enough sleep, or bad nutrition, can you really get in there and access your own source code to make these deep changes? It kind of suggests that maybe, just maybe, maintaining the machine has to come before you can truly upgrade the software. Something to think about.